Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. My name is Ty Detmar. Let's get started. Alright, you've seen the thumbnail, you've seen the title, you know what this video is. Let's get into it. Top 10 draft busts of the decade, of the 2010s. What I decided to do was take one draft bust from each draft and use them for that corresponding year. So it'll be one draft bust from the first round from each year to come up with the top 10 2010 draft busts. Boy, why did I make this a tongue twister? I have no idea. I digress. So I'm not going to finalize this in any sort of order other than chronological. If you want to go back and rearrange these in your top 10, chronological order be damned, feel free to do that in the comments section below. I'm not going to do that. I'll let you all do it. All right, so for 2010, the first draft bust that we got on the board is going to be C.J. Spiller for the Buffalo Bills. And the reason I picked him was because I think there was more potential to be unlocked with C.J. Spiller. Actually, if you remember, quick anecdote, if you remember like the NCAA video games, that year or the year before prior, playing as Clemson was actually a pretty good time because you had both C.J. Spiller and you had his teammate James Davis. So you could just absolutely be unleashed terror on offense with that team in that game. But in real life, it didn't translate. C.J. Spiller only lasted 90 games. He was picked 9th overall this year, and he had 3,451 yards and 12 touchdowns for his career. So not exactly top 10 production, if you will. There was something left to be desired, and that's why I decided to go with C.J. Spiller for this spot. Moving on, 2011 drafts. We have the Tennessee Titans taking quarterback Jake Locker. He went 8th overall. And out of the gate, not so good. Not a great year for quarterbacks. I believe Blaine Gabbert and Christian Ponder were also in this year. Probably could have went with one of those two guys too, but Blaine Gabbert at least managed to make a journeyman career out of himself, and Christian Ponder had Adrian Peterson, so he got carried into the playoffs, even though he did get to play that game. Yes, we had to start Joe Webb against the Green Bay Packers on the road in the playoffs, and we got our asses kicked. So that actually gives me an idea. I might do like a top 10 most embarrassing moments as a Vikings fan, or most upsetting moments. I don't know, something like that. That might be a fun video. All right. So Jake Locker only played in 30 games, 4,967 yards, 27 touchdowns. Not top 10 production. Not at all. And we've seen it before. I mean, like, if you go back to the previous decade, it reminds me of a guy like Joey Harrington when he got picked by Detroit. Just nothing you could do. Nothing you could do. Wasn't able to make the jump to the next league. And speaking of, nobody on this list really was able to. The next draft pick for 2012, I'm going with my team, the Minnesota Vikings, taking Matt Khalil, 4th overall, left tackle from USC. At least we didn't get Trent Richardson, right, Browns fans? Right? Oops. Matt Khalil, as I said, was 4th overall in this draft. He played 82 games, and when he got cut by the Vikings, I was pretty happy about that. I was glad to see him go. Didn't think he was good at all. Absolute turnstile at the left tackle position, which is an incredible position that you need to make sure you have filled in this league. And then I think he played one season with the Panthers, and either he's out of the league or he's with the Texans right now, because I think I made a joke about him a while back that, oh, Bill O'Brien doesn't really take Deshaun Watson's health seriously because he signed Matt Khalil. So I don't know. I'll check after this video. Maybe he's with the Texans. That'd be hilarious. All right, moving on to 2013, we have an obscure name. You know, everybody remembers the Ryan Leafs. Everybody remembers the Jamarcus Russells of the draft, those kinds of busts. I don't think too many people are going to remember Dee Milliner. He was drafted 9th overall in 2014. Or no, I'm sorry, 2013. Jumping ahead of myself. Got to keep my chronological order intact. But he was drafted 9th overall. Only played 21 games, 50 tackles, 3 interceptions. Definitely not top 10 production. Definitely not a top 10 career. Think about it. It's 2013. This was only 7 years ago. He could still be in the league. But he only lasted 21 games. And I don't know too much about Dee Milliner's career other than the stats that I picked up for the research for this video. Like I said, he's obscure. Maybe there was some injury problems in there. I don't remember. I'll check after the video, which I should have did before I did. But I looked at the stats and I was like, whoa, got to be a bust, right? I'm kind of like just critiquing my own video in the video, like video inception, right? All right, for 2014, we're going with the player that I think could be the bust for the decade. Pretty good contender. Anyway, the Cleveland Browns, 2014. Okay, this was a good draft. It's pretty loaded. Like, I might do a redraft of this one and make it its own video, but everybody seemed to really either hit it out of the park or get a really quality starter, except for the Browns, who messed up twice. They got Johnny Manziel later in the first, but early in the first, 8th overall, they took Justin Gilbert. And this is the bust. If you're looking for, like, a good example to show somebody for what a NFL draft bust is, Justin Gilbert's not bad. Only lasted 3 years in the league, 35 games, and didn't amount much to anything. I think, like, the first season I was surprised that the Browns weren't even using him. I think he was just reduced to special teams duty. But yeah, I mean, what a waste of a draft pick. I'm sorry, Browns fans. It's just how it goes for y'all sometimes, but you're doing a lot better recently. I applaud the effort. All right, moving on to the 2015 season. It's not really fair to him, but I went with Kevin White out of Chicago, wide receiver. And he was dealing with injury problems before the draft even happened. There was question marks about him all throughout the process, and he had to miss a lot of time early in his career, and I think that really hindered his development, so he was never able to quite get acclimated to the NFL, and it shortened his career. What could have been promising, he was a pretty spectacular athlete in college, but sometimes injuries just, they come up and they grab you and they rip you back down. There's no recovery from them, so it's unfortunate. But for this draft, I went with Kevin White because that was probably, I think, I don't want to call it the worst pick, because injury is something you can't predict, but then I could say that about any player, really. I mean, it's always a crapshoot no matter what happens. You have to roll with the punches. All right, so for the 2016 season, we're going back to picking on my team. I'm going with LaQuan Treadwell as the worst pick, the biggest draft bust of the 2016 draft. There was a season where he had one catch for 15 yards. What the hell? Now, I know I'm willing to listen to arguments for Corey Coleman in this one. However, I wasn't going into that draft with Corey Coleman as my wide receiver 1 on the board. LaQuan Treadwell was being hyped up as being this wide receiver 1. I think the other receivers taken in the first round were Josh Doxson and Will Fuller. And Will Fuller is the only one so far worth a damn. Watch out, Bill O'Brien might try to trade him if anybody finds out Will Fuller's kind of good. But LaQuan Treadwell, I mean, we cut him, we re-signed him. He's with another team this year. I totally even forget who that is, but it doesn't matter because he can't catch a cold. He definitely can't catch anything. All right, moving on to 2017. I'm sorry I hope none of them watch this video. Like, I'm being very harsh. Moving on to 2017, I decided to go with John Ross. Now, there's still time for John Ross to get himself out of this list, but for right now, if his career ended today, I would have to keep him on it. He was drafted, 9th overall. He played in 24 games. He's got 24 games under his belt so far, 716 yards, 10 touchdowns. He had a good week 1, week 2 last year, and then kind of fell off the board. This isn't the production that I expected out of these. They draft these speed demon wide receivers. They ended up being one-trick ponies. And, it's funny because everybody questioned DK Metcalf's, like, 3-cone ability and his route running last year. Ends up having a great rookie season. I think top 5 rookie wide receivers in terms of stats production. And John Ross has just been flailing his entire career so far. And John Ross doesn't have a good route tree either. So it just depends on the athlete and depends on the mindset. And it depends on the coaching. So just a lot goes into it. All right, moving on. We have our most recent 2 drafts. 2018 draft, it's a little harder to call people bust yet because it's only been a few years, especially with the 2019 draft. We've only seen them for 1 season. So as this video stands, as of right now, for 2018, I'm going with Josh Rosen, the Arizona Cardinals. Took him at number 10 in 2018, and he was 10th overall, but he never really got a chance. The Cardinals fired their head coach halfway through the season. They were the first ones to do it. The offense was terrible. David Johnson ended up having a down year, and the offensive line has just been horrible for a couple of seasons in Arizona. So then he gets shipped out because Cliff Kingsbury comes in, and Kyler Murray was the #1 overall draft pick last year, so he's immediately traded to the Miami Dolphins, and it's just he gets to Miami and he gets beat out by Ryan Fitzpatrick. So the reason that he's on this list is because he got beat out by Ryan Fitzpatrick in Miami. You can't let that happen. You could call it maybe coaching ineptitude in Miami, but I don't think so, because they managed to win a few games with that roster, which is pretty impressive. So I think not being able to beat out Ryan Fitzpatrick at your second chance is probably going to doom him to staying on this list. Even though I do feel bad that he got stereotyped right away out of college and he didn't get a fair shake in Arizona, and it was not much easier in Miami, being on one of the worst rosters in the league 2 years in a row in 2 different cities. So that's my speech on Josh Rosen. It is what it is. All right, so for 2019, again, like I said, hard to call people a bust because it's only been a year. But if I had to hedge my bets, and I've said this before, it's well documented in my content that I don't think Rashon Gary is going to amount to much in this league, unless they figure out how to use him correctly. I watched the tape before the draft last year on Rashon Gary because he was projected to go in the top 10, so I wanted to see what the hype was about. I didn't really see much. Not a fan. I assumed that they were going to move him inside, play defensive tackle, and it hasn't been the best. It wasn't the best year for him. I think he only had a handful of tackles and not many other statistics, but there's still time. It's one season. He has a chance to break out. Bud Dupree just broke out last year. He's been good for a while, but it was a big year for him. So that's it. Yeah, that's my top 10 biggest draft busts of the 2010 decade. Let me know what you thought in the comments below, and if you want to do these in a non-chronological order, going from the bust of the decade to the 10th worst bust of the decade, you could do that as well. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.